Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. We'll give a couple minutes for the session to populate fully. Good afternoon. I'm Paul Kincaid, Associate Administrator for the Federal Transit Administration's Department of Congressional Affairs and Communications. Thank you for joining the DOT's press call today to announce a historic investment in Alaskan transit infrastructure and throughout the nation, thanks to President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. By joining this call, you're agreeing to the following terms. The three primary speakers on the call today will be on the record and can be quoted, and their video and audio may be used freely. Any subject matter expert assistance is to be treated as background and not for attribution, though the information can be used. We'll also be emailing you a press release shortly. Today, we're pleased to be joined by Federal Transit Administrator Nuria Fernandez, U.S. DOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg, and Senator Lisa Murkowski, the senior senator from Alaska. Following their opening statements, we'll be able to take a few questions. Please use the raise hand function on Zoom. We'll recognize you and elevate you to ask your question, then return you to the attendee pool while the answer is given. With that, I'll turn it over to Administrator Nuria Fernandez for her opening remarks. Administrator?
Thank you very much, Paul, and good afternoon to everyone. I am very happy to join Secretary Buttigieg and Senator Murkowski today to announce projects that were selected for funding through FTA's ferry programs. Two of them are brand new. They support our goals to expand, improve, and modernize passenger ferry service nationwide. For many people living in a landlocked areas, ferries may not immediately come to mind as a transit option. However, for the people of the last frontier, we know that the ability to travel over your waterways is absolutely critical, especially for small towns and Indian villages along the coast. FTA's ferry programs help transit agencies buy vessels, upgrade ferry terminals, and modernize equipment. And today, we're going to be announcing the awards of 23 grants in 11 states and the U.S. Virgin Islands to support passenger ferries and provide more people access to jobs and opportunities. We're focusing this call in Alaska because your state will receive the largest funding through the new programs, nearly $286 million in investments for the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Utilities, which supports passenger ferry service throughout the state, including in remote locations. Those areas which rely on safe and efficient ferry service for the health of their communities need upgrades. Thanks to the President's bipartisan infrastructure law, we have more resources to improve how people travel by water. And that's important because more than 3 million people ride passenger ferries every month. With the increase of funding, we're supporting ferry systems like never before. We will allocate more than $384 million using funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law. I greatly appreciate the support from Senator Murkowski, who was instrumental in expanding the passenger ferry programs as part of the legislation. She championed the rural ferry program that now forms the backbone of our grant program for ferries. Together, we are committed to ensuring that our coastal waters, rivers, bays, and other bodies of water continue to connect millions of people to everything their communities have to offer. This year, with the additional support, we introduced 2 ferry grant programs, one that's designed to boost service in rural areas and the other one to lower emissions by supporting transit agencies as they transition to low and zero emission technologies. That includes electric or low emitting ferries and associated equipment that reduces greenhouse gas emissions by using alternative fuels or onboard energy storage systems. All of this means that Americans all over the nation will be riding new American-built ferries to get where they need to go. That is the equity piece we often talk about, providing jobs and opportunities through transportation and leaving no one behind. Through the 6 grants going to Alaska, 5 of them through the Rural Ferry Program, you will be able to see new, safer passenger ferries in place of older vessels, ferries that are outfitted and improved with new modern features and critical dock upgrades. All of the projects support the operations of the Alaska Marine Highway System, which runs 3,500 miles and serves 35 communities. We are very pleased to support the work that will help agencies make these renovations, which are typically very expensive, so everyone can reliably access jobs, go to school, and community services via our nation's waterways. They also provide critical transportation during natural disasters and other emergencies. And it is through the FTA ferry programs that we will take a major step toward promoting equity in our transportation systems. Under the Biden-Harris administration, we're committing to making our transit systems work for everyone, allowing people to get to all of life's opportunities. Providing cities and states with the means to upgrade their ferry systems is going to help expand public transportation as we look towards leveling the playing field for all. Now, I would like to turn this over to Secretary Pete Buttigieg for a few remarks. Mr. Secretary.
Thanks very much, Administrator Fernandez, for your work. Thank you for team. So thank all of you for joining us. And I especially want to recognize and thank Senator Murkowski. As Nuria said, Senator Murkowski was key to getting these provisions into the law. She is a champion for passenger ferry service, especially in rural communities, and is a big part of the reason why we have this bipartisan infrastructure law in the first place that has allowed our administration to support bridges, roads, ferries, airports, ports, and more. And I hope the fact that we're both here is a reminder of the bipartisan nature, not just of this infrastructure law that we're so hard at work in the Biden-Harris administration to implement, but the nature of infrastructure itself. Our bridges, our ferries don't identify as Democratic or Republican. This is about getting things done for everybody and delivering that better transportation system that Americans need. And that certainly includes remote communities and rural communities where ferries can be vital. A lot of people, when they think about transportation, will be more likely to think of trains and automobiles. But for so many communities, including the 35 communities along the Alaska Marine Highway, where everything is spaced further apart, where transportation is very expensive, waterways are critical, and they're part of everyday life. The 6 grants for Alaska that we're discussing today are going to help replace old vessels, help to upgrade docks, and help to improve service. They're going to better connect people to resources, to opportunities, and to the vital services they count on. And as Administrator Fernandez said, this funding is coming by way of 3 programs: the ferry service for rural communities, the electric or low-emitting ferry pilot program, and the passenger ferry grant program, which collectively provide over $384 million for improving ferry service. In addition to the Alaska Marine Highway in the lower 48, we are supporting Washington State building a new electric charging facility and upgrading their electronic payment system with modern software. A 35-year-old ferry being replaced in Maine with a new hybrid electric vessel that's going to serve 600 residents of a rural island community. And an opportunity in Massachusetts to modernize a ferry dock that includes reconstructing walkways, upgrading lighting, safety and security systems, and many more improvements around the country. These projects are going to advance so many of our key goals when it comes to infrastructure policy. Jobs and economic growth, because they're connecting people in more spread out areas to the jobs and opportunities in city centers that they might not otherwise reach. Accessibility and equity, because waterways connect rural towns and Alaska Native communities with schools and doctors and other vital resources. And addressing climate, because electric ferries mean cleaner air, less pollution, and lower emissions. So that really makes it a win-win-win. And to share more about what this funding means for people and for communities that rely on this ferry service, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Senator Murkowski, again with thanks for your support, your engagement, and your leadership.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for the praise there and the thanks. I want to thank the administration. I want to thank you and your team. I want to thank the administrator for your efforts in working with us throughout the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It is significant in so many ways, but again, for a state like Alaska that is somewhat unique in our limited infrastructure that we have. We don't have roads that crisscross our entire state. We are a state that is very reliant on our airports and our waterways. And so through the benefits of the infrastructure bill, we've seen strong support for our small airports. That's going to make a difference. But what is so key within this infrastructure bill, what is really monumental, which is really, quite honestly, a big fat deal in Alaska, is to be able to connect our coastal communities over the water. Our marine highway system is a system that has been in place for decades. I grew up in the southeastern part of the state. This is an islanded archipelago. Our state's capital is not connected by road, is part of an island. And our communities are separated. And how we are able to access everything from medical care to supplies to being able to move our kids to basketball games. Yes, we do have airports, but the cost to be able to move a basketball team or to move a family who needs medical services, we have over the years, over the decades, relied on our Alaska Marine Highway system. You mentioned the communities, the 35 different ports along the Marine Highway system route. This spans an area of 35,000 miles. So put that into context, because both you, Mr. Secretary, and Madam Administrator have pointed out that Alaska is receiving a significant percentage of these federal ferry dollars. That is true. I believe it's nearly 75%. But it is primarily because Alaska happens to be a state that has more coastline than all of the other states put together. We are a state that comprises a landmass that is equal to 1/5 of the United States. And so how we connect is perhaps very different than in the lower 48. So I appreciate the administration and my colleagues recognizing that for Alaska, how we connect may look a little bit different, and the value then to the Alaska Marine Highway system. So you're right in recognizing that I really did have Alaska's system in mind when we were working on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I worked hard to create this ferry service for rural communities program, but also with regards to the electric and low emitting ferries pilot program. We have some communities that are very far apart, and the ferry run from the peninsula area of South Central Alaska over to Kodiak or down to Dutch Harbor is a long ways to go. We're probably not going to be seeing electric ferries out there, but in many parts of Southeastern, say between Haines and Skagway, where your run is just a few hours, the opportunity for electric ferries to serve these smaller coastal communities that are already receiving their power by clean hydropower, to be able to plug in literally shoreside, as we're seeing some of our cruise ships be able to do in certain ports. This is the future going forward. It's access, it's connection, but it's also recognizing that we're doing all that we can to reduce our emissions. So this is historic funding, nearly $286 million to aid Alaska Marine Highway Systems operations, the vessel acquisitions, the shoreside infrastructure. It was important that the state made all 6 of these applications, and the fact that all 6 of these, almost all, have been awarded as they were applied for. This is great news for our infrastructure, but also for our state's economic future going forward. You have both described in some detail the benefits of the 6 awards, but as an Alaskan, it does make me proud to be able to point out what a difference it's going to make in communities like Pelican and Tutitlik and Chiniga, where their docks are in such need of repair that they really are very limited in being able to meet ferry service going forward. And what that will mean to those communities if they do not have these repairs is everything. This is how supplies come to the community. This is how people move in and out. I was in Tutitlik not too many months back, had an opportunity to go out on the dock to hear directly from the townspeople in this small community what ferry service means to them. It is their lifeline. And so for these small communities, it is significant. What it will mean to Cordova, what it means to Juneau to have these dock improvements, to recognize that the Tustamina will finally be replaced. We call it the Rusty Tusty. And boy, oh boy, is she durable and she's tough, but she has had a pretty long life for a vessel that is out in the Pacific waters. And so being able to finally move forward with a replacement for her is extraordinary. So I know we have press that are curious about how these funds will now move forward when they are made available. It has been important for us to be able to communicate with our state legislature, our state administration, the governor, to reinforce the opportunity that we have now to put Alaska's marine highway system on a sustainable footing going forward, and the benefits that it will provide for these communities, the economies that it would help, the families that it will help, the villages that will be able to be connected again, as well as ensuring that with modernization and update and moving towards opportunities for electric ferries, we're also working to reduce our emissions. So it is a win, a win, and a win. And I am just delighted to be part of this conversation today in announcing these grants. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this Zoom conference. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Secretary and Madam Administrator. We'll be happy to take some questions for about 6 or 7 minutes until our participants have to leave. If you want to use your raise hand function on the Zoom, we'll be happy to elevate you to ask your question. Our first question will be from Liz Ruskin of Alaska Public Media. Liz, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I guess this question is for the senator or the secretary. Do you have any assurance that the state will continue to support this new system with operating funds and maintenance in the future? And can the state of Alaska afford it?
Well, I'll speak to that, Liz. I did have a conversation with the governor to share this good news about what this meant for the Alaska Marine Highway System going forward. It's pretty good news, actually, to be getting about $250 million to help again get our marine highways on a sustainable footing. But I also assured him that with these federal dollars, it is not the intention, nor should it be, of the federal government to claim ownership of the Alaska Marine Highway System. This is our state's marine highway system. We're getting support for this connectivity that's going to be so important, but it is up to the state to figure out how this system is sustainable going forward. The support from the administration, the support that's coming from the bipartisan infrastructure bill is significant. And it is, as we remind people, it's a 5-year bill. So this is not as if we are putting in federal dollars on an ongoing basis. The state has an obligation and a responsibility, and I'm going to do everything within my power as a member of the Alaska delegation to make sure that we take full advantage of this, and to just put it bluntly, that we don't mess this up.
Only thing I'll add is that, these programs really are responsive to applications and requests that come in from transit authorities and from states. So we're not thinking up the projects here in Washington. We're just making sure that we're able to fund what's needed on the ground. And I'll also say that when a state understands the importance of infrastructure and makes the investments that are needed on the state side, that makes it much easier for us to be a great partner at the federal level. And we appreciate those partnerships where we're bringing major federal investments alongside commitments that states are making.
Thank you, Senator and Mr. Secretary. Our next question is from Jazz Garrett of Rain Check Magazine. Jazz, if you want to go ahead and unmute your microphone and go ahead with your question.
Hi, I am actually here with KINY Radio News of the North. And my question is, will any of these funds go towards the icebreaker being considered to be home ported in Juneau? And if not, where could that funding come from?
Well, I'll speak to that very quickly. The 6 applications, as the Secretary has mentioned, are very specific as to their intended purpose. So, no, they will not be available for the commercial icebreaker that we had hoped would be included as part of the appropriate final omnibus appropriations. Was not. We're going to work on that next year. I don't know if anybody else cares to add anything to that.
As you noted, Senator, it's actually for these very specific projects that the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Utilities will be allocating the funds. I would like to invite John Bodner if he has more details. If he doesn't, we will follow up with the report.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. And I believe Secretary Buttigieg has to depart now for his next appointment. Secretary, thank you for joining us today for these announcements. And we'll be able to take a couple more questions. The next question is from Trill Gates. Oh, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thanks, Senator.
Trill, go
Hi
ahead with
there.
your question.
Thank you. Senator, a question about when you talk about improving services. I'm just wondering, Alaskans, right now, it's pretty expensive to get on the ferry. I was doing a little research and if you were in Haines and want to go to Juneau and take your car and go shopping and go to a Costco run, it's about $185 one way. Would improving services mean making it a little more affordable for Alaskans to use the marine highway system?
Well, Trill, I think that's certainly the design, the intent, the thought. As we know, when you have a system that is not reliable, when people can't, when you look at the schedule and then they change the schedule at the last minute and it doesn't happen, you stop counting on it, you stop using it. What happens is ridership drops off, and then in an effort to try to not be losing quite as much money, they have to increase the prices. So one of the things that is key to kind of the sustainability is how we can really restore an operational schedule that works for the communities. And I'll just share just very quickly here what the 6th application covers. This is the sustainable operations, but they cite specifically to ensure that route coverage is appropriate and in place for served communities, that seasonal route schedules are able to respond to the increased workforce of travel demands, and the vessels have their necessary preventative maintenance addressed. So again, I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the Alaska Marine Highway System is a sustainable system as we have defined within Alaska. And so what that means in terms of cost and affordability, we can't design a system that people can't afford to travel on. That's not sustainable. So again, these are federal resources that are allowing us to kind of move forward with the planning. We did learn from FTA, that Southeast Conference, will be able to receive their $2 million from the congressionally directed spending from FY22 for the ferry planning pilot program. So I think that is important, because that's part of what has to happen too, is how do we build out this plan that's going to be sustainable?
I would just like to add that one of the main reasons for these programs, the passenger ferry, the rural ferry program, and the Lloyd bidding, is to in fact introduce those additional dollars for a major capital investment, renovation of the existing docks, replacement of the vessels, rebuilding of the vessels, planning for adding fast, safe, frequent, and reliable service. Because without it, as the senator noted, we would lose ridership. And if you don't have the fares, that means that the funds for operations need to come from another source. At the federal level, we cannot regulate fares, but we can support, and we'll continue to support with the help of Congress, the capital improvement necessary to ensure that that ferry service is there. Because unlike other parts of the country where there are options, this is a very critical lifeline.
Thank you, Madam Administrator and Senator. We'll be able to take one or two more questions. Clarice Larson is on next with her question. Clarice, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, this is Clarice Larson with the Juneau Empire. I'm asking, could we get an update on the replacement of the Tasmina regarding, it's described as a hybrid diesel electric vessel. Is there an expectation for how much it will rely on electric versus diesel power?
I don't know that we have that specific. You've probably got the same language in front of you, but with regards to that application and specific to the Tasmina, it does say, as part of the project, design updates to the new vessel's diesel hybrid propulsion system with batteries to provide a safer, more efficient, environmentally friendly platform. But again, I think that's a DOT question, more specific.
And Madam Administrator, I believe we have a subject matter expert on the line who can discuss that a little bit more. John?
Yes, John Bodner here. So we don't have the details on the propulsion system as asked, but this grant here that's being awarded is for the first 2 years of construction of a multi-year project. So as the project progresses, I'm sure those details will come into better focus.
Thank you, John. And we have time for one last question from Adrian Peterson of KTVF. Adrian?
Thank you so much. First and foremost, over the last few years, we've seen kind of a shaky development with our ferry system. A couple were built, but haven't really been put into use yet. A couple other were sold off. And then, of course, with the pandemic, there were all sorts of concerns with how to safely let passengers access and use the ferries. So I'm a little bit curious, what were some of the proposals that were submitted to Congress and to the executive administration when considering the funds that have now been allocated through the bipartisan infrastructure bill?
Adrian, I could speak to the proposals that were submitted in terms of the ones, I can speak to the ones that we are awarding. That information, we talked about it just lightly at the beginning in the introduction, but there are 6 grants that are going to be going to Alaska, and I will run down very quickly. We did touch on the electric low emitting application, which has a multi-year, and it's the funding, the $46 million that has been allocating for that is for the construction of the project itself, but it's a multi-year project with subsequent applications that will be coming through. There is the replacement of the Tasmina vessel that's serving the Southwest Alaska. There is replacement planning for future service and replacement needs of the new Alaska mainliner. And there's also the restoration of the sustainable operations to rural communities. Even though that's operations, it needs to have a local match. There's also the modernization of 4 of the critical Alaska Marine Highway System vessels. And all of these funds, all of the applications came from the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Utilities. The last one is another critical upgrade to a ferry dock infrastructure in 5 rural Alaska communities, and the detail of the communities and the scope of each of these projects will be made available once those applications, once the awards are granted and the information becomes public.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. We are a bit out of time, unfortunately. Thank you to everyone who stopped by. Senator, Madam Administrator, if you'd like any final comments.
No, just pleased to be able to announce, I know we're going to have an opportunity for some of the Alaska reporters who might have additional questions to participate in a follow-on Zoom from this, but I want to thank the administrator for her engagement. I know we're going to have a lot of work after this with all of the folks at FTA, and we're going to be joined at the hip in implementation. So we invite you up to Alaska to check on our progress. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. And again, thank you and your colleagues in Congress for your support of all of our programs, and particularly for the ferry programs. We have so many communities that this is the only connection that they have from their land to mainland. So thanks again, and thanks to all who participated in today's announcement.
Thank you.
Again, thank you all. If you have any questions, please let your FTA representative know, and we'll be sending a press release along shortly. Thank you for your time and for your interest in FTA's ferry programs. Have a great day.
Thank you, Senator.